Thank you. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Thank you to the PMA for inviting me to talk today. I've personally enjoyed the Britney Spears microphone. I won't be breaking out in dance or song. You can be rest assured. As I said, my name's James. And over the next 20, 25 minutes, I'm going to talk through the media landscape as a whole and how product marketing has really shaped that, especially the last few years, from my perspective. But first up, just a little bit about me. I won't give you my life story. I won't give you where I was born or anything like that. But in recent years, I was working for a media agency side, working for a Publicis Group, Engine Group, working on a various number of clients, working in fashion and beauty, the irony being that I'm not fashionable or beautiful, but I survived that experience, working for brands like Hugo Boss, Calvin Klein, across the Coty portfolio. I also worked for sports, in sports, so Under Armour, England Rugby, Premier League football, and then I moved over to become head of social media at Man City Football Club. As a Leicester City fan, it was a little bit painful. They won a lot while I was there. I can't take credit for that, but I do call myself a Premier League champion. Anybody can question me about it, it's fine. I then moved on to be head of media for European sport at Prime Video. And Prime Video at the time was investing heavily in sport, Premier League football, rugby in this country, Champions League football elsewhere. And that's where I bridged into PMM. So at that point in my career, I took on a new role at Prime Video called Head of Marketing for International Expansion. And that is essentially taking the Prime Video business and product and launching it across new countries in Europe. And that's where my consumer-facing social media, digital marketing background became, hey, look, there's an area here I don't understand. So what we did was we went out during that time, and we actually built a product marketing team. And that really helped us accelerate the growth of the business. And we launched a Prime Video business across 15 different countries in Europe, Turkey, Poland, Portugal. And PMM was fundamental in doing that. I then went on to work inside the Amazon Group again, but inside Amazon Advertising, overseeing the sports business. You can see a theme here, both a passion point and also business. And I was the head of global sports sponsorship there, which I think the title is probably slightly misleading. It was essentially a PMM role with a PMM team, looking at how you can monetize sport across the Amazon ecosystem. So working with retail, Twitch, using Amazon Fashion, Prime Video, of course. So that's my background. And today, I work for Rakuten. Now, Rakuten is a Japanese company, founded over there. It is referred to as the Amazon of Japan, if you look on Wikipedia. It is a ginormous ecosystem of different businesses. Very strong inside internet services, which is a very broad bucket, fintech, and mobile. As I said, very well established in Japan. Over here in US, Europe, LATAM, it's growing through acquisitions mostly. They've made different investments in different areas. And I joined the business over the summer, so fairly new, to be able to grow that from a product marketing perspective. In particular, I work on the media business. This comes as no surprise to you, given my backstory. The media business really takes form of 4 different businesses in the portfolio. Rakuten TV, streaming service available in Europe. Rakuten Viki, which is a streaming service specializing in Korean and Asian content. Rakuten France, which is an e-commerce platform specific in France. And Rakuten Viber, which is a communications app similar to WhatsApp, if you're not familiar with it. And so my role now is global, if you exclude the motherland, Japan. And I work, and my team works to be able to grow these businesses from that advertising perspective. So trying to make sure that we're earning money to be able to fuel the growth of the business. Just a little bit about that in more detail. So we have a fairly substantial ecosystem where advertisers will come to us and say, hey, we want to reach X audience, and there's a high probability we can reach that audience through our different advertising formats and different advertising channels. Everything from like Gen Z through to millennials, avid shoppers. With that ecosystem, the 4 companies I mentioned, plus the other partner businesses I haven't, so So trying to kind of keep it condensed. We can reach a fairly global and sufficient number of people. That means within product marketing, actually it's slightly different to my peers who have spoken to date, or up till now. We don't actually report into product or marketing, ironically. We're in the global strategy and commercial operations organization, which gives me and the team the ability to both influence upstream conversation, 5-year strategy, looking at maybe acquisitions, looking at what are we going to do from a product perspective to be able to grow the business, what are through to like your downstream go-to-market. And the 4 areas there are looking at, number 1, understand the different customers and shape the strategy for that. So that, like that in the Rakuten world is about 2 to 4, 5 years out. We look at the product roadmap and define what that problem is to be able to inform the roadmap and the prioritization of that. And then finally go-to-market strategy to enable sales. In the advertising world within media, that is ever-changing because there's been huge growth in the way media has been perceived, as well as changes in the industry. I'm going to talk about those now. Everybody here, raise your hand if you subscribe to Netflix. Solid amount. Hands down. Disney Plus. Solid amount. DAZN. Ooh, DAZN's not popular. One sport fan out the back there. Yeah, so these companies I've just mentioned didn't exist 15, 20 years ago. Everybody watched linear TV. And what's happened is the streaming service world has popped up, has cannibalized linear TV. And the stat here is that 41% of UK-based people prefer to watch streaming over linear TV now. And that 41% number fluctuates based on the country, but it's around there, that ballpark, slightly actually higher in the US, slightly lower in smaller European markets, but the overall trend is that that's changing. So we as an industry are having to deal with that streaming phenomenon and our role within that. This is the US market. I've included it because it kind of sets the scene really well. US population, 330 million. That means there's 130 million households within the US. That's 120 million broadband households. So there's only a small amount without broadband. 119 million of those households have a smart TV. And 109 million of those oversubscribe to SVOD, which is subscription video on demand, so streaming, as you know it, or AVOD, which is advertising video on demand. Now, the difference being, for advertising video on demand, you tend to pay a little bit of a lower subscription, but you accept seeing ads, whereas SVOD tends not to include advertising. And that's, sorry. And that has really changed the industry. Here are a few different other stats, just to kind of, so you can understand the context here. The average house, this is US, but again, you can, it's relatable to other markets. The average household subscribes to 3.4 subscription services. So you probably subscribe to Netflix, Disney Plus, my friend at the back, DAZN, maybe Apple TV and others, and maybe you rotate some. But on an average, the household subscribes to 3.4, and that means you're outlaying about $47 in subscription revenue. In subscription, sorry. Which means the SVOD, subscription video on demand, accounts for 25 billion, and AVOD accounts currently for 21 billion. And that's where the growth is going to be, because there's different macro trends in play, right? There's a recession, which will make people question if they need that many subscription services. There is an abundance of different streaming services out there, which give you multiple choice, different free trial periods, and therefore you're trying to continue to shape what you want your experience to be inside your living room. And that is going to skew towards AVOD due to that downwards pressure on the price. You can see here that means that from an advertising perspective, we as an industry are growing and will grow very, very quickly. So today, as I said, there's 21 billion worth of revenue there. By 2026, the forecast is to double. And from a product marketing perspective, we have to work within this industry, which is ever-changing, it's very disruptive, there's B2B elements to it, of like, say, streaming service to hardware. How does Rakuten TV, Netflix, etc., work with Samsung, LG, different set-top boxes? As well as B2C. Then consumer drives a lot of this change by their viewing habits and how that's evolved over the last 5 years. Here I've called out 5 different areas, which, and I won't linger on any of them in particular detail, but you'll see that number 1 being trend is that SVOD is blurring or moving into AVOD. Netflix launched an AVOD tier. So if you want to save a little bit of money on your Netflix subscription, feel free to go in and accept ads and drop the price point there. Disney Plus will launch an AVOD tier on the 8th of December, just in time for Christmas, conveniently. Also within the industry, there's tons of different acquisition and mergers behind the scenes. Warner and Discovery merged, so they currently have 2 different streaming services, HBO Max, Discovery Plus. They're looking to bring that together under one umbrella. DAZN acquired 11 Group to bring on more sports rights into their portfolio. So again, that's a kind of a dynamic in product marketing. We're like, okay, well, are we going to do business with this company? What's the long-term potential of this company? How is it going to play out? What's our go-to-market strategy as a product? Kind of introduces different challenges. Third is blurring content streams. Live sport, if you know sport, you probably subscribe to Sky Sports and BT Sport, and then Prime Video popped up, and you have to subscribe to Prime Video as well. If you're in the UK, other countries, there's obviously different players out there. But live sports traditionally been a pay TV format, which is now transitioning into streaming. Partnerships, I touched on already. What are our partnerships going to look like? Who are we going to do business with? Hardware devices, that's continually changing. Do you want your button on the remote or not? That obviously comes with a different price. There's different aggregators, set-top boxes. So Roku, an example in the US, Sky. Here you can access Prime Video and Netflix through your set-top box. So again, that's a different element to it. As well as lastly, and again, I'll dip into sport just because I like talking about sport. So if you want to have lunch with me and talk about football, please let me know. I'm not a fan of Gareth Southgate personally, but you can make that argument if you want. On the sport side, it's been super, super interesting. Here's an example. I didn't work on it, nothing to do with me or my business. But ClipperVision, so the LA Clippers, an NBA basketball team, decided that, hey, we have a bunch of games going on which are not being shown through broadcast. We are going to go direct to consumer with our offering, and we will broadcast the games which are not on TV. Of course, with that streaming capability, you can bring in different formats. So you can have different mascot animations popping up if it's more geared towards kids. You can have different legends, different punditry. You can have different stats overlaid on the screen. This is all, on the product side, innovation, which wasn't allowed or wasn't valid within the industry 10 years ago, because it was all through linear. The UK equivalent, Prime Video to a certain extent, but they don't really own the rights, they buy them. Premiership Rugby TV, if you're into Premiership Rugby, has a similar offering. So that direct-to-consumer element, where you're cutting out the middleman, essentially, as a rights holder, is an interesting one. So setting it for the grand unveil. What is the role of product marketing? So from the advertising perspective, you have the brand who wants to reach the end consumer, and you have the publisher in this world, Rakuten TV, Netflix, Disney Plus, and then you have the media buyer who the brand would work with. So that tends to be a media agency who I used to work for on that side of things. And they can buy inventory in different ways through streaming services to have the ads shown, and that's a super simplified perspective of it. The way PMM works within that, there's a real, in the media landscape, there's a real hyper-focus on the macro trends in play. And that's because the industry is just changing. It's changing too fast, and a 5-year strategy is going to change in 5 years. That may not exist what you're trying to do in 5 years. So identify the gaps in the market and really I think my peers mentioned it earlier, but prioritization is key. If you're going to work on that roadmap, you're going to identify the gaps, build out the product roadmap with the product team, and then say, hey, look, we have to move super fast in this area. This is going to be our big bet, and this is going to be on the back burner. This may actually change in 4 or 5 years. What are we going to do over here? Are we going to get a jump on the competitors? And how do we do that? So there's a real focus on kind of macro trends to be able to shape the product. And then there's, of course, the downstream go-to-market, get the sales collateral ready, make sure we pitch it in the right way to the different advertisers out there within the market. And I'll round off with my top 3 tips, because I'm conscious of time. The first one being what I found really, really useful is, especially someone new within Rakuten, but also kind of changed jobs. Don't have 15 years, 10 years, some of my colleagues here. It was to understand the business economics. I'm not saying you have to understand the balance sheet of the business. Like, I work in a portfolio business where there's different businesses, but understanding each business's P&L has been really, really useful to me. I don't need to know like the exact numbers and the detail of it all, but understand what levers they're pulling to generate profit, and then what is the long-term strategy and big bet within that P&L, which product marketing can work with and be able to make a reality. It's been really useful to be able to prioritize between the different business units within the portfolio in terms of where we put, which is essentially a small team's effort to be able to grow. And it allows us to work further upstream on the long-term business cases and be able to influence our strategy. So those things won't be possible without understanding what makes the business tick and where the P&L sits. Second one, especially within media, is understanding the end consumer. So a lot of what we do is B2B, which is fine. So we have a client who we have to service, and we want to give them the best product possible. But they're being influenced by the end consumer. So being able to understand how those macro trends I touched on, viewing habits changing, live sport transitioning slowly, for example, and how that, like live comedy, where's that being watched? All those different things, and having a good focus on the end consumer and worrying deeply about that will help our B2B strategy, because that's the sideways pressure on our customer from a B2B perspective. And one tool we use within Rakuten, it was created by Amazon, I'm sure most of you know it already, is the PRFAQ. So when we are developing a new product release, PMM writes a dummy press release. What that does is it gives us the ability to explain clearly to the business how this is going to be pitched, what's the value proposition, but also how is it impacting the end consumer. That press release probably won't ever see the light of day. That will be the marketing team or PR team who do that. It may take inspiration from it, but it sets the tone internally of how this product is going to be customer obsessed. How is it working from the customer perspective? And then there's an FAQ section, which are frequently asked questions to the industry, based on the product. And then lastly, I think I found it's been really useful to be opportunity focused. I think there's a quote here, I can't remember who said it, but you spend 80% of your time focused on the opportunity of tomorrow, not the problem of today. Within an evolving landscape, very disruptive, that's been a really useful thing for me and my team to be able to talk about. So we actually don't spend too much time worrying about the ins and outs of the go-to-market strategy, what's on the sales collateral, because if we're talking about the problem in 2-3 years, all that downstream should work itself out. Of course, we don't live in a perfect world. I can't stand here and say I'm the best person at this. But focusing on that problem, long-term problem, will release the tension downstream and set the business up for success. That's me. Happy to take questions, and feel free to grab me for lunch if you want to talk about the World Cup or anything else.
Awesome. Thanks, James. I especially like those 3 tips at the end, especially getting people to focus on opportunities of tomorrow. I think it's easy to sort of fall into the day-to-day when it's a hectic time like now. Let's answer a few of these questions. I think people are really interested in your background. You've got like quite a unique experience in sports. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's been beneficial to your career personally, and then what are the advantages of coming from that?
Yeah, so I was talking to my colleagues and friends over the coffee break. I started out in social media, which is similar to, I think, Lady at LinkedIn and a few others here, and kind of just rode that wave. Social media kind of morphed into digital media, then morphed into above-the-line advertising. So I sat on like the consumer marketing side, and then it was at that point in Amazon which is a tech company, extremely product-focused, where it became obvious that, hey, in our mature markets, there is a drive to drive user acquisition, and the consumer marketing element's fine. When you start launching a product in new countries, we're not equipped to do that with that exact skill set. We need to be able to adapt. But taking on what I've learned through consumer marketing really set me up well to be able to make that transition. So, of course, we hired key different people to be able to help, but to be able to scale a business which was very mature, Prime Video, within 5 countries in Europe, across another 15, and be able to shape what the product looks like, right things from the price point through to what is the content on the content slate, what product features are we going to introduce with Prime Video, what partnerships are we going to do. There was a kind of a more holistic view, and that personally added a level of sophistication, which I enjoyed. To my kind of career. So yeah, that was me transitioning over.
Nice. And then earlier you mentioned that your team does different kinds of product marketing. You have B2B that handle like hardware partnerships and B2C. How have you set up your team, and how do they tend to work with each other across those different areas?
Yeah, so Rakuten Advertising sits as a central function within the Rakuten Group. And we work very closely with our sister companies. So we sit within the Global Strategy and Communications and Commercial Operations division within Rakuten Advertising. And we probably talk most weeks with the different businesses about what they're doing. There's, of course, a little bit of to and fro around product. Is it a product-owned thing by the business unit, or is it owned by Rakuten Advertising, the central team, to be able to monetize? So yeah, there's definitely a strong working relationship for the different business units, which I think will just continue as the business grows. Inside the team, we only have one person currently. I joined in July. We have one person. We'll look to grow next year and the year after as the kind of business grows. So PMM within Rakuten within Rakuten Advertising was only founded a year ago, 18 months ago. So we're a very small team trying to work out how we operate inside of what is a very sophisticated, large ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that fits in with a lot of people's experiences. Product marketing is a startup, even in a big organization.
Yeah.
Let's do one more question. I mean, I was certainly impressed with kind of the depth of insights that you had in your presentation. It seems like you guys are really good at understanding the end user. So maybe you could tell us what are the best tools that you would recommend to get insights on your end users, internal teams or media agencies, your own research. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, I don't think there's like a silver bullet to answer this question. We have different data sources we pull from. Some of them are bespoke surveys or bespoke research pieces, which we commission to be done inside certain markets. Of course, there's a prioritization there between which markets we do that in. We look at different information provided by the business units themselves, so Rakuten TV, for example, or Viber, or whoever that business is, to be able to inform our strategy. A lot of desk research goes into things, just trying to understand what's going on inside the landscape. We do consultations with industry experts. It's a real area of focus. We need to improve on the tools we use. It's just something as we've grown. I'd love to be able to self-serve a lot more information than we currently have access to. And it's probably a common side effect of a business trying to establish a product marketing function, right? We just don't have those tools in place. So there are, of course, data tools we do have access to, but it's definitely an area we can grow in.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for that insight. Let's give James a huge round of applause.